Welcome to your Daily 5 for Monday, January 8th, 2024. I didn't realize that I had never done, because my wife and I finished Fringe, I want to say now about 3 weeks ago, the 2013, well, it was 2008 through 2013 science fiction series that if you look around, people have rightly claimed, or I shouldn't say claimed is the wrong way to say it. People rightly identify this as one of the great modern science fiction series, which I totally agree with. So it's not like I didn't know the show was going to be good, but it took a long time for us to actually watch it. Interestingly, we started watching it on one of Lando's visits probably over a decade ago now, and we never finished it because honestly, I think we'd only made it through, I want to say maybe a few episodes into season two. That's my recollection of it. But my wife is not as into hard science fiction as I am. So I think that when we were watching it, Lando was here. I think it was one of those things where we weren't really watching it. We were kind of watching it, but we were also talking, so it wasn't really getting into the series the proper way. And then I think my wife was a little bit reluctant to watch it because it seemed very heavy on the science fiction, and that's just not generally my wife's area as much as it is mine. But I had read a lot of reviews that said, no, the characters are really what this show is about. And like most great shows, it's not necessarily the premise. There are those shows, there are exceptions, of course, but most shows really become great because of the way the characters are and the way those characters are written. And that was what I kept reading about Fringe, was ultimately you'll remember the science fiction elements. Yes, they're very, very present in it. You can't avoid it. But really what you're going to come away with is these wonderful characters that you really get to know and see them change and see them grow, and you really actually care about them. And that's why I said, okay, let's watch this. And in the first season, I believe, I think we're going to do a show about it, so we'll find out. I don't think I'm going to talk about it on the main show. I think I'll wait and I'll do the show with my wife because I want to get into this with her. But I think she was not as engaged with the first season, which starts off in a very kind of standard, almost X-Files way. X-Files, but with more gore and less supernatural elements. It's more based in science in general. But it feels a lot like an X-Files, not clone, but an X-Files analog. And that, I think, wasn't as interesting to her. And then once you get past season one, and really by midway through, I'd say season two or so, you really start to understand that the characters are what's going to carry this show. Don't get me wrong. Again, the storylines and the science fiction stuff, I thought that was great. I loved everything Fringe was doing. But for people who aren't as automatically into sci-fi, the characters are going to overcome what might be a less interesting aspect or core aspect of the show. The characters are what you watch Fringe for. The characters are what you remember. Their interactions, their struggles, their successes, the way that they interact with each other, the way that they really do change and become. It's so fascinating, without getting into spoilers, because this is still a relatively new show. 2013 is only 10 years ago, compared to some of the stuff I reviewed that's somewhat newer. But there may be people who want to go into this thing cold, and I try to keep the fives spoiler-free as much as I can for the most part. Unless it's really, really old and really well-known, then I don't care. But in the case of Fringe, there are several times where that show completely changes in many ways what it is. Almost in every season, the show radically shifts. And that can be a tough thing to do, but what keeps it from becoming too disjointed and too disconnected and too tough to keep up with is there are always anchors within the characters themselves. And that those anchored characters, and they move around. It's impressive the way this show moves the anchors around in terms of who stays the same and who suddenly shifts for some reason. It always makes you want to follow what's going on and to hope that they get back to whoever they're looking for or whatever problems come up between a couple of characters. You want those things to get resolved. And that's what I'm talking about. The strength of Fringe, the stories are great. The overall storyline is great. It's a wonderful show in terms of just its narrative, period. But what elevates it over many other shows that have the same type of strong premise, starting points, and good narratives and everything else is the characters. And those characters are so good that they make it into a classic show. It is a modern classic, more so than other shows whose names get kind of bounced around a lot. Fringe is one that really, by the strength of its characters and the way the show writes, maintains, and grows those characters, it really is a cut above most other stuff. So if you never watched it for whatever reason, like I said, it took a long time for us to get to it, I would say give it a shot, and give it a shot for a while, because once you get far enough in, you realize how much it pays off. Fringe is just an excellent show. Later.